Okay, and everyone should be able to see the screen now. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our November CUCSA chat by the numbers, building your staff organization through assessment. Really glad that you've all joined us for this conversation, and because talking data is always fun. Before you get too deep into it, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Dennis McIver. Pronouns are he, him, and his. I am the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Program Manager at UC Office of the President. I just hit 7 years of service in the UC, so we'll go ahead and fix that next time. I'm also the chair of the Council of UC Staff Assemblies. Most of my leadership experience comes from UC Riverside, where I was for most of my time in the UC. I'm a past president of UCR Staff Assembly, and I'm also a past chair of UCR's Black Faculty and Staff Association, and I'm very excited that we'll be able to have this engaging discussion with you. I want to take a moment to also acknowledge our immediate past chair and my partner in this work, Crystal Petrini, who's providing some backup support for everything. So be sure to say hello and thanks. Before we get too deep into things, I did want to do our land acknowledgement, so I'll read that out very quickly. The Council of UC Staff Assemblies recognizes that our service occurs on the unceded territory of the indigenous peoples of California, and that these lands were and continue to be of great importance to them. Every member of our community has and continues to benefit from the use and stewardship of these lands. With respect and gratitude, we acknowledge and make visible our relationship to the original caretakers. We've also placed a few different links here that are also on the CUCSA website, and I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of these resources just to better understand the indigenous history of the state, and there below. So just a little couple of words related to Zoom etiquette, and I know we've been doing this for a while. This is being recorded for future use for everyone. We do ask that you leave your microphone muted during the course of the event. If for some reason you miss a moment or you want to check this out later, this will be placed on the CUCSA social media, and questions will be answered towards the end of the presentation. We do ask that you type questions into the chat as well. So I wanted to just mention that the work of assessment can be challenging, but it is really impactful. And I had a chance to see the UC San Diego Staff Association's presentation on their assessment model, and I was so impressed and inspired by it that I thought this is something that there's a lot of value in understanding from all of us. So I'm really grateful that Shannon as well as Elizabeth were willing to step in and tell us a little bit about their experience. And I think it'll be a great conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and read some biographies. So we'll go ahead and start with Dr. Shannon Milligan, who is an assessment professional with 15 years of professional experience working with co-curricular and curricular assessment of student learning and institutional research. She joined UC San Diego in 2019 as the Director of Student Affairs Assessment, Evaluation, and Organizational Development in the Office of the Vice Chancellor Student Affairs. She received her MS degrees in Educational Research and College Student Development from Oklahoma State University, and her PhD in Educational Psychology from the University of Illinois at Chicago. One of her favorite things about San Diego is that she can sit outside and read almost all year round. I would agree. I've been to Balboa Park more than once, and it's fantastic. And we're very grateful to have her here. And next, we will welcome Elizabeth Jimenez Perez, who is an institutional research analyst at UC San Diego. It is Elizabeth's professional, scholarly, and professional goal to engage in empirically robust research and assessment that examines the systems, structures, and practices within higher education that hinder equity. Elizabeth is a two-time CSU alum, receiving a bachelor's degree from CSU Fullerton, as well as a master's degree in post-secondary education with a specialization in student affairs from San Diego State University. I will stop share at this point, and I'm happy to welcome Elizabeth and Shannon to speak. So the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you all for being here, especially during lunchtime. So we really thank you all for being here during this time, and we're definitely excited to be able to share space with all of you and be able to talk about assessment, which is something that Shannon and I love, and just data, and just like how do we conduct, like equity-minded assessment. So thank you all for having us here, and just thank you to CUCSA for allowing us to share space with all of you. It's really such an honor for us to be able to be here with all of you. I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing screen. Is the screen good? Yes. Okay.
You're good.
All right, thank you so much. So I know we did already a little bit of introduction, so thank you, Dennis. As you all know, yes, as mentioned, Shannon and I are both co-chairs, which has been definitely a great experience for both of us to be able to work on this together. I think one thing that Shannon and I really do value is just working, with partners and just being able to do it together, bringing more people like just in this collective way is really helpful. So it's really been great to have Shannon as a mentor to be able to, just kind of go through this process. So a little bit of what our agenda looks for today. We want to go a little bit into our UCSD Staff Association, talk a little bit of like our role within the Staff Association, some assessment benefits, so taking it a little bit back, and also how also a little bit about our equity approach that we take to assessment. I think one thing that we take a lot of pride, in our assessment is that we really try to ground it in equity mindedness, which is really important, right? And that's something that we always value, and just making sure that we are being student centered. So that's kind of like the approach that we bring to our assessment. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that. And finally, Shannon will be doing a quick overview of our tracking log. So kind of how we do assessment for the Staff Association. All right, let's move forward. So for UC San Diego, our vision for the Staff Association is for all staff to have the opportunity to engage and thrive as integral members of the UC San Diego community. The UC San Diego Staff Association engages and empowers all UC San Diego staff in order to advocate for staff priorities and maximize our impact. So our top 4 priorities for our Staff Association is to build community through staff engagement, to celebrate our staff contributions, to unite the voice of UC San Diego staff, and finally, to influence change based upon staff identify priorities. So this is where data really does help us, right? Being able to lead certain conversations. All right, so what is our role within the Staff Association? So the 3 main things that we're kind of responsible for is first to collaborate with assessment related constituents. So anybody that wants any support related to assessment, we have our Staff Association, but then we have other committees such as a Chicano Latino Staff Association, for example. So finding different ways that we could collaborate and just help with assessment is something that, that we do. Second, we track assessment related to the Staff Association. So anything, that requires tracking, that's something that we do. And finally, ensuring that we active use of data to improve the Staff Association and the experience. That's something really important, right? How do we, again, utilize data to lead conversations? It's something that's really important and something that something that we do and really do value. All right, so I wanted to go a little bit back and just have a conversation about like, why should we even do assessment, right? I know oftentimes there's so many things that we are expected to do and not a lot of, just priorities and stuff, but assessment has a lot of benefit, right? Sometimes I think it just takes a little step back and really seeing the value of it. So a little bit of why Rashani shares that when assessment is done well, it can really reinforce or emphasize the mission of your unit. In addition, it could really modify, shape, and improve programs, which is something why I love to do assessments. And also just to critique a program's quality or value compared to the program's previous years. And another great value when you do assessment is that it can inform planning, decision-making. So taking that time to step back and check previous year's assessments and how can they inform our planning for moving forward. And also just evaluate programs, right? Not personnel. I think oftentimes when we talk about assessment, it could be seen as punitive, or we're talking about specific people, but no, it should always be seen as like we're talking about the specific program or event, whatever, and really being able to think about this assessment is being conducted so we can improve the program for future years. So really that improvement is really important, right? And additionally, just support the request for additional funds, for example, so being able to utilize that data from assessments and assist with meeting accreditation requirements, models for best practices, etc. So as you can all see, there's a lot of value in being able to do assessments. Now I wanted to talk a little bit of what does an equity-minded approach look like when doing assessments. And this is courtesy of the UC San Diego BCSS Assessment Evaluation Core Values, and definitely want to shout out Shannon that has led this work and really being able to work with different campus partners to be able to review these core values for student affairs. And again, one of the things that we're constantly working on is creating this culture of like equity-minded assessment, and something that Shannon has definitely led, and it's been really important again to be able to take a step back, right, and do assessment, but always making sure that it is grounded in equity mindedness and student centeredness is something that's important to us. So we start off with utilizing a collective impact approach. So collective impact, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, is wherein units come together to support a shared agenda. So again, something that collaborations is really important. To serving our students, faculty, and staff by using a holistic understanding of campus experiences. So for example, this looks like sharing best tools, best practices, right? Sometimes we're all like in different silos within, just like the university. Some people might be working on one thing, others, but how can we, try to share different tools that we are working on is really important. Second, building processes and expectations for collaborative and independent assessment practices that promote progress while also incorporating flexibility. So this could look like providing different templates for different offices, for example, also working in collaboration with like AEOD, for example, like Shannon's office. And I want to talk about the flexibility. I think this is meaning more just, I like to think about assessment. One of the key things when you're working on is thinking about the context in which you are assessing and how that context influences what you are assessing, right? I think one thing that taught us in 2020 was COVID, right? You were not going to continue doing the same assessment during that time. Maybe it required you to take a step back and really check what are like immediate needs right now, and then being able to be flexible to that context. So that's one of the things that equity-minded really requires us to be mindful of. Additionally, not only thinking that, but how do external environments affect the context? Again, COVID, a lot of like the other stuff that's been happening in the world, it's really important for us to really think about how this impacts our students, our staff, and just being really mindful. Our fourth core value is building assessment practices and policies that strive to be inclusive and bias aware, interrogate and disaggregate data, and include multiple data points to provide holistic scope of student experience and development. So a little bit of data is that disaggregating data alone is not sufficient. When we need to be able to have the skills and competencies to conduct equity-minded assessments of this data. Institutional change requires the opportunity and capacity to learn from failure. It means digging into data deeply, purposefully, and systematically. So really thinking about that. And finally, ensuring assessment practices leave room for time and flexible discussion, intentional reflection, and deliberate actions, just being transparent about actions from visual findings, processes to address gaps. Again, that final part of the closing of the loop is very important, right? Sometimes we conduct an assessment and we move forward right away, but having that specific time where we're, taking a step back, engaging in conversations, really thinking about like, how are we gonna be able to implement some of the recommendations that came out of the assessment into our work is definitely something that we really need to be mindful of. And now I'm going to pass it over to Shannon so she can review our tracking log.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I definitely want to give a lot of props to my assessment co-chair for all of her enthusiasm and passion for assessment, and especially, assessment truly grounded in equity and student-centeredness. Very much am honored to be co-chairs with you. Like Elizabeth said, I will now share my screen so you can see the tracking log that we're using. So getting this a little bit more concretely into what we've been working on for staff association assessment. So I'm going to show the form using I'll pull up a preview to show us a little bit cleaner, maybe. And then it can show some of the what it looks like on the back end. I know that's a little harder to read, and we can share the preview as well. So the thought for the tracking log was twofold. It was part before Elizabeth or I were on the staff association. The president, or the chair at the time, had been looking at a way for being able to track what work is being done in relation to the priorities for the staff association that Elizabeth shared earlier in the presentation, and thinking about how do we do this, and especially thinking about, how do we do this while respecting that our staff association members are volunteers, who have full-time jobs and, personal lives and everything outside of staff association. So we had that. And then we also had the creation of the assessment chair position, which I was the first person to hold that role. And this is my second term in the position. So thinking about how do we try to make the assessment as streamlined as possible, and really starting to work through the whys and the importance of assessments, and then also, a functional way of doing this. So the staff association member who had been working a lot with the, how do we look at the work that's being done related to the strategic priorities? And then I had met and decided the most efficient way would be to streamline this into a tracking log, which we set up using Qualtrics, which is the main survey system that we use at UC San Diego. So the first part of this form is the tracking log. So we ask for their names. We have built in the different functional chairs, and then also, for like the chairs for our Black Staff Association and other affiliate groups, built-in quarter. And then this is, really the big part of the strategic, or part of this tracking log is you're getting a sense of, what if you did a program or, hosted an event, something like that, which of the goals or did your activity align to, so that what, especially at the end of the year when we're doing, more of a year in review, we're able to pull from like, an accomplishment of building community through staff engagement. We had this event, and be able to, say something about those. And also wanting to give space that, for example, for the marketing chair, some of their goals may be completely individual, like using a new listserv, or something very pragmatic and very specific to that person's role. So this goes into, indicating if there were measurable initiatives that and this would be like anything that specific programs they're doing, that it would be related to a little bit of information about the activity. And, again, really getting into the assessment piece, like what happened and, how does this connect to what we've been looking at? And then also that reflection about, like, how would you help your future self, whether it's you or the next person that's in this position, in order to, think about this program or what's being done. So that's pretty specific to, again, this, tracking around initiatives and strategic priorities that we've been doing. And then once a person comes in here, so if they were, we have our special events person, Kelvin, unless he disappeared. So not to put you on the spot, Kelvin, but I'm really glad you're here. So if Kelvin is coming in to fill out this form about, one of our like Celebrate the Night events, that would tie in very much with the role he has in staff association. So he could fill this in, indicating the alignment, making notes about, this met a goal that I had to have like 200 people there, or, to have more campus leadership presence, whatever the case may be. And then for that, Kelvin would say, yes, I do also want to fill out a post-event form. So for somebody that, was, and this is where we're going to stop doing that, because I'm not going to fill in all the like fields in there. So, for somebody who was just wanting to report on, like, we did a new marketing blast. This isn't an event. There's not really assessment details to include for that. That could be the end of the form for them. But if they are wanting to do a post-event form, we built in skip logic so that it would scoot down here. And so let's run with Kelvin Celebrate the Night example. So Kelvin could indicate the name of it, put in the date of the event, whether it's new or recurring. In this case, it's something that's new. And we want to make sure that we're being comprehensive about whether this was something hosted by the executive board or by an affiliate group. And so if somebody were to select an affiliate group, there would be different options to select in there. And then the event details is where we get into this as assessment, and also like what I really like to refer to as helping your future self, is thinking about like if you had a real bomb flyer for the event and you wanted to make sure that you had that to refer to in the future or for future you to look at, then we have this so that people would be able to upload that, or if technology failed, as it does, and you wanted to upload a sign-in sheet, just anything that would be able to help for the future and also for planning. And some questions about the intended audience, like Celebrate the Night is something that is open to our staff colleagues who tend to work evening and overnight shifts, and therefore tend to not be on campus for the majority of the events that we have that are during the day. So we'd indicate here, again, thinking about how is this going to be helpful for Kelvin when he's planning this event, but also for, future special events chairs to be able to see like, oh, okay, and helped with that continuity piece that's been really, really important, especially during the pandemic. So continuing on with some details about attendance, any metrics, and then really getting to, what Elizabeth was talking about with this, what went well and what can be improved. So we're having this as an opportunity to engage in that assessment around, looking at, okay, like this went really well. Like we were able to get the chancellor there, and it was, was really appreciated that he was there in community with our colleagues, or improved. And this actually happened. Like we forgot to set out the QR codes that we'd created for the survey one year. So I'd make a note of like, be sure to set out the QR codes that we printed. It wasn't a big deal. We sent out the survey, later as good adaptability, but just being able to have that reflection, or like, we didn't, be able to make notes of like, we didn't see as many people from this particular area of campus. Maybe, we need to do more intentional outreach, make sure that they know of the event and know that it's open to them. And then a question about whether there'll be a post-event survey. We as the assessment chairs can help with that, especially for some of the larger events, like if we need to set up the survey and send it out, and then some people, are really familiar with Qualtrics or other survey softwares and want to send out the survey on their own. And so we have this, largely as a nudge to the attendees to the organizers of like, yes, and then I will share the results with the assessment co-chair so that we're able to have that to look at holistically, and in case they need any help with the review. And then if they don't, like, it's like, just, we've been doing trait and treats where, say folks could come up and get root beer and soft pretzels. Doesn't really lend well to a survey. That, tracking is really more helpful with assessment and, making observations on that. So that we also kept most of the questions on the assessment part for the post-event survey optional, just knowing again that not everybody will need to fill this out, and wanting to make this something that, it doesn't feel like a burden, but it does feel helpful, and therefore, letting people respond to what is most pertinent to those events. So that is what we have with the tracking log. I'm gonna stop sharing, and I believe we can open up to any questions. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Elizabeth?
No, just wanted to open up for questions.
Well, in that case, thank you both for giving that very informative presentation. I think that's a really good model overall to take into consideration. I can start with a couple of questions, and I want to invite anyone who has questions to please feel free to type them into chat, and we'll be happy to jump into them. And I think that one immediate question I have is on the back end, once you've completed the assessments, have you found that there have been many opportunities to reassemble as a broader group and kind of talk about the results and the findings? So are there really many chances to just kind of collaborate and look at the data together to just reach conclusions with it?
I think that's a great question. I think that's a really big growth opportunity for us. Like, as I'm sure everybody on here is able to relate to, having the joys of the pandemic and being remote or not remote, it's definitely had an impact on being able to roll all of this out. And I feel like every year we're able to move things forward a little bit more in terms of how much we're able to be together, how much time people have. So in some instances, we have, I swear I'm not picking on Kelvin, and Kelvin is a wonderful colleague. Like, since Kelvin has been doing a lot of these events, we have had an opportunity to talk through the results. And I see that Jen Bowser is here as well. And when she was chair, we would meet and talk about the different results. But I think that is definitely an opportunity for us, as we continue to get used to doing assessment for the staff association and using these forms, continuing to adjust to whatever our new normal is in terms of, where we're working and what we're doing, that would be, definitely something that would be great to do, and part of a monthly meeting or retreats to be able to go over the data from the assessments more broadly. We do make time in the meetings to go over the CUCSA survey results, when applicable, and go over very intensely with those so that, we have a chance to think about, like, to make sense of those from our own, lenses and identities. And then we run, I apologize, I don't know if the staff at work survey is something that the entire UC system does, or if that is UC San Diego specific, but that's a survey that we do every year. And we also make time in at least one of the meetings that we run, at least one of the meetings, to go over those results and be able to talk through them again in terms of meaning making. And we also had a town hall about that last year, where we talked about the CUCSA results and the staff at work survey results. So, but yeah, definitely something that would be a great next step with our assessment.
That's fair. And I want to acknowledge Jim Bowser, who joined us, who, besides being immediate past chair of UCSD's Staff Association, is also operations officer of CUCSA. So, and I do have a side question for Jen, but I'll table it for now about assessment. But I think the next question I have is, I think when it comes to assessment, it can be kind of intimidating for those who don't necessarily have as much direct experience with it. I didn't know, on terms of resources to just get comfortable with learning how to build a survey, what type of language should be used. I didn't know if you would have any recommendations on how folks who are kind of new to the space can start getting comfortable with it, because I do think it sort of requires a certain specific set of skills.
I'm actually going to drop a link to the National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment. They have a lot of great resources when it comes to assessment, also like on equity-minded assessment, and they're usually like short articles. So definitely, I know we usually reference them a lot. So that's one great place to definitely check out.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. I've had a chance to do a little bit of work in the space with developing surveys, and I know it can be a little bit intimidating for folks overall. So the more resources we can make available, the better. And for anyone that's listening, don't worry, we'll share it in the email that I'll send off later on as well for anyone. I guess the next question I have, and I do invite anyone who has other questions to please type them into chat. When it comes to doing this work for influence, have you found that using data has been impactful when it comes to talking to leadership within the university? Because I think that's another real benefit to data, because folks do kind of understand the value of data, but so my question would be, have you had opportunities to use this data in the conversations that have happened with senior leadership at UCSD?
I will respond a little bit. I would invite Jen Bowser. If you feel comfortable, Jen would be a wonderful person to add to this response as well. That has been one of the most, being in staff association has been such an incredible opportunity. And I feel like that's been one of the most incredible aspects, has been the opportunity to reference data in conversations with President Drake, with our chief financial officer, chancellor, and so forth. So we did, especially around the CUCSA survey results. We were able to present those to university communications. Like I said, we shared those at a staff town hall. And it has been really powerful, and especially in knowing the leadership culture on our campus, to be able to say, like, okay, we're having attrition issues. And yes, we see that through the HR numbers. And we also look at these survey responses, where people are telling us, like, this is why I'm not sure I'm staying. And this is, or like, why people are leaving. And also being able, doing so very carefully and responsibly to look at the CUCSA survey data disaggregated, by various demographics as well, to be like, we're really having issues with like new staff members. And we can see this based on the survey data. That's been really powerful to be able to share those results. And again, also to be able to tie in that data when we are having those conversations. Jen, do you want to add anything?
First, thank you, Shannon and Elizabeth, for being here today. I was not camera ready, so this is Jen on Tuesday. I don't know what I could possibly add to that, Shannon. I think you really did a great job of summarizing every place that we've been able to use data. I think being organizers of events, I think being staff association or staff assembly representatives, we definitely have a different perspective. And we need to get that feedback from the staff who are on our campus to better understand how they're receiving any effort that we're making. And maybe it's not just the staff association or staff assembly effort like we have been with Triton Treats or those types of appreciation events, but trying to get their feedback on what a campus is doing and how it's affecting them or impacting them. And really those metrics, it's something that anyone's looking for, staff, also administrators, leadership, because that's the proof. If you have those metrics, that's what you can point to. And it seems to be a theme, not just in this world of staff association, staff assembly, or even CUCSA, really in any of our worlds and any of our jobs, that if we have that information, we can justify why we're doing something or need to be doing something. So I don't know that I added much to Shannon's response, but it definitely has helped us in advocating for more on the UC San Diego campus.
And I would just jump in and say, even on the system level, when it came to CUCSA, we've had a couple of opportunities, specifically in the last year, to talk about the staff engagement survey, even before the regions. And there are two different instances that I'm thinking of. The first one happened almost a year ago in January, where Crystal, shout out, had taken the time to present the staff engagement survey results. And that was a really good presentation. Then we did a follow-up a few months later in July before the Regents, and we had an opportunity to actually show the visual results. And there was a really stark difference on terms of how the information was absorbed, but still having that data to be able to present, but then have something visual to support it, I think did so much when it came to folks understanding the magnitude and the nature of the problem. So having that data, especially from a source where there's trust and understanding of where it comes from, I think becomes so impactful when it comes to having these conversations. That's my impression anyway. Crystal, I'll let you jump in if you strongly disagree, or even a little bit.
No, of course I don't strongly disagree. I think the the biggest thing for me in terms of like the data is, yes, is it reliable, right? And I think with the CUCSA survey, since it's been going for the last decade, I think more and more campuses and leadership on different locations have started to trust what the data is saying, because it does, correspond so directly to internal surveys like the Staff at Work survey that happens at UC San Diego. So I think that that's great because it allows more staff to be able to use the data, and the more that we're transparent about it, the more hands it gets into, the more that people can talk to individual faculty and students and everyone, just to kind of get them on the same page, because I think as staff, we still are so invisible to a lot of the folks on our campus. The work we do is very invisible. It's almost just like magic behind the scenes. And so the more that they understand what the staff are going through and our perspectives, I think the more that we can, work together on making our communities better for all of us. And I think that with the Regents presentations that Dennis was just talking about, the original January, it wasn't a presentation, actually, it was just remarks, right? And it's so difficult to give remarks on data, right? Because to me, data, it can be so visual and there's so much that you can do, but when you're stripped of that opportunity to provide visuals, how do you paint a picture through story and through narrative with the data, right? And I think that that's a thing that I think a lot of people miss, is like the numbers are the numbers, right? But the way you tell a story and what you're able to really paint through those numbers is what really lands for people, because now not only do they have this evidence, right, in the numbers itself, but then they also have the heart and the soul of everything that goes on behind it, right? So they're able to kind of you're kind of able to tackle both sides of the brain while doing these things. So yeah, I love these things clearly. And I'm so glad that we're able to have two people who are excellent at assessment and at these data, much more than I am, be able to present to all of you. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Crystal. And the last piece I'd add is, since we're talking a little bit about the staff engagement survey, I'd also add that the work of the engagement survey was so important that even last year for our delegation, one of our work groups focused on best practices for it. And so that information is available. And so I would say for your locations, if your CUCSA delegates are interested, then that is something that could be brought to you, even if you're thinking about ways to use that information. So I'm glad that that's available in perpetuity. I think the last question I would have is about data and visualizations, because that's such an important piece, because the numbers in themselves can be so intimidating. So I guess my last question would be, would you have any resources or advice when it comes to visualizing the data? Now, I know that's been mentioned a little bit in chat, but I didn't know if there are any resources that immediately cut to mind that you'd recommend using for data visualization.
I could start off a little bit. I'm not sure if all of you might have Qualtrics, but Qualtrics is a great place that actually creates visuals for you already with the data. So that's like another place, like if you're not too familiar, having that is really useful. Also, I've used like Canva, which is another free resource to create like reports and visuals on there. So I'm always looking for free resources as well, where I could be able to do my visuals. So definitely Canva is a great one that I've used for a lot of my reports. But if you do have Qualtrics, it's definitely very helpful when you do a survey, and then it's just like a bar for you, like a graph bar, right? So those are two. Is there any others, Shannon, that you can think about?
Those are the main ones. And like I said in the chat, Elizabeth is really great with data visualization. And what I really appreciate, especially thinking equitably and finding free and low cost solutions, because Tableau is expensive. So no, I would definitely defer to you as somebody was truly excellent with that.
I did want to, one more thing, sorry, Dennis, if it's okay. I wanted to share another resource. This book, actually, it's called You Are a Data Person. So we all are Strategies for Using Analytics on Campus by Amelia Parnell, which I'm a big fan of. She works, I think she had a position in NASPA, but definitely goes, just over again, starting really being able to empower everybody. We all are data people. We all use data, right? Sometimes only maybe some of us have like data in our role, but we all, constantly use it. So definitely want to encourage you all to ask for funding and get the book, but also you can get it it, I think, at your public library if you have a library card. Again, it's all about free resources when possible. So definitely check it out. And there's also a podcast as well, like a quick podcast if you ever want to check it out.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And we're all about doing things within our means. And so the more free resources we can have, the better. And not to worry, everyone, I'm saving all the wonderful resources we received. That'll go out in the email later on. And I'm so glad that we were talking about data, because that's a good way to conclude. But before we do that, thank you to Elizabeth and Shannon for a really good, really impactful presentation. I think you not only brought inspiration, but you also made this very digestible. And so I appreciate the time that you taken to do this. And closing out, I'm going to share a few things for everyone. The first one is our post survey for this CUCSA chat, because we're big fans of data too. And so if you'll go to the link, the first link, that will be our survey. We'd ask all of you to take the less than 5 minutes to complete it. We are trying to make use of that information. And I want to talk to you about the couple of other things that are mentioned in the link. So I'm going to share screen for another moment. The next thing is going to be coming up on December the 14th. And that is going to be the CUCSA Town Hall. And what's going to happen during that conversation is you'll get a chance to hear about the upcoming events for CUCSA. You'll have a chance to learn about the work that our work groups are doing centered on retention. So I do encourage you to check this out, and it'll be really good. It'll be the same general time, and we'll try to keep it to under 50 minutes. The following thing that I want to share with you is the first that I know of in recent memory, and it's going to be a system-wide roundtable to check in with 3 of our system-wide organizations, CUCSA, as well as administrative management professionals, as well as the staff advisor to the regions. And the purpose is to just tell you what we've been up to, as well as opportunities for you to engage locally. And so I'm really glad that we're going to have Michael Austin from UCR, as well as Priya Lakareddy from UC Merced, and having a broad conversation about what's happening system-wide. And so we hope you'll join us for that as well. I'll be sure to include that link as well in the follow-up email. And we hope that you'll join us for all of those things. But in the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about CUCSA, what we're up to, and all the cool things we're doing, I do encourage you to check out our link tree. It'll give you all of our social media, our websites, even some videos are up there. And it's just a good chance for you to stay engaged with the work that we're trying to do for you. So please check out those links. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. We have lots of means of communication that are available for you. And just know that we're continuing to try our best to do the work for our policy covered staff and beyond here in the UC. So at 12:49, I'm sending everyone to have lunch and get ready for their 1 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of the day.